Good morning, everybody. How are we? So, fail to plan, plan to fail. Absolute cliched expression, absolutely true. If you do not have a plan in your business, then your business is going to be like a car that's got 40 brakes, 40 steering wheel, and it's going to wobble and go all over the place there as well. So my name is Mahmood. What are we going to be talking about today? Today, we're going to be talking about planning in your business. We're not going to go overwhelm here. So we're going to lay out in terms of the mindset that you've got to adopt to get into planning. We're going to look in terms of what you need to do to actually get your business from what's in there, where you'd like it to be, and how you're going to take it forward itself. My usual thing, I'm going to go through just a few pointers to take on board. We're going to have a few slides, bit of interaction. We'll round up at the end. For those of you coming back on replay, press the replay here, and we're going to have some useful stuff to share. I'll give you a heads up at the end of the broadcast in terms of what happens next. But for now, let's get on with the show. Statement of the obvious, perhaps. So for me, the start point is, in terms of a goal without a plan, is, as it implies, it's purely a wish. It's purely an aspiration. At this stage, what I'd like to emphasize here, we're not talking about, we're going to sit down, we're going to go through a lot of what I call heartache, ball ache, whatever you want to call it, of actually coming up with a 50-page document here. We're not as though we're talking about presenting it to the bank. Do not think of the plan as the end document. Think of the plan that translates what's in there, translates what you're used to, your experiences here, and translating those into some degree of formality. My analogy would be that none of us would think about going on a holiday, on a trek, without at least thinking about the destination, without even thinking about how we're going to get there, without thinking about the currency that we might need to take with us, without thinking about where we might stay, perhaps what we might see. We can obviously be completely reckless and abandon all of that. But again, that's going to create a bit of a risk for the holiday. The enjoyment levels may not be as much, and we're not going to get as much out of the holiday experience itself. So we're not talking about straitjacket. We're talking about mindset and approach and attitude and application, converting that sweat into some degree of equity as we go forward. Bit of housekeeping. Let's just pause there. For those of you, this is a live session. For those of you who wish to contribute, ask any questions, you're more than welcome to. There's the usual, I believe, comments and chat box in your screen, which you should see. I'll do my best, as I always do. In fact, I'll give it a thumbs up of answering all your questions. But for now, let's progress on from that stage there as well. We're going to touch upon what some of these terms mean, by the way. So in the context of planning, we come across a number of terms that float about. Finance people, business people are very great at bombarding us with terminology here. Let's strip that out. Let's try and get to grips with what that means for us in our daily business lives. So goal, let's move on slightly here and just expand on some of those terms here. Now, there are going to be some numbers, by the way. So your plan without numbers is a bit like going to a restaurant that's very well decked out. There's no food on the plate. It's a pointless restaurant. So a plan ultimately has got to have numbers in there. It's got to have some financials in there. But for me, I wouldn't actually start thinking about the financials at the beginning. Financials are really critical because that's what we're in business for, isn't it, everybody? Is to make money, to do things with that money, to sustain, to avoid a full-time job perhaps. But money is there to keep things going. And if you haven't got money in your crosshairs, then you've got a hobby or a very time-consuming activity going on. But for me, do not produce your plan of attack. Do not come up with your business plan, your action plan. Don't focus on the numbers first. Blend those in. And we're going to deal with more of that number crunching and what we should think about, analysis, etc. next week. But for now, it's laying down the foundations, laying down the framework. And as it zooms in, now, I love this quote here. For those of you who are boxing fans, you might recognize the two individuals in that picture. We got one of the best heavyweights of all time, whatever your viewpoint is. Muhammad Ali is still my preferred heavyweight for a number of reasons, but this is not a boxing show. That's Mike Tyson there, and I believe that's Evander Holyfield who's been floored there. And he was interviewed after a fight, And one of the commentators was saying to him about, how the fight was going out. And he was saying that everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Now, this is not saying, by the way, that your business plan is going to have people coming at you all sides trying to punch you in the mouth. But it says when we lay out where we think our business is going to go, the direction, great if you create it in a vacuum. But as soon as things happen, things go wrong, things deviate, catastrophes come on, even better opportunities here, then that's what we're going to react to. So do not think this is as a solid framework here. This is a focus. This is a direction that we're going to go into, but our plan and our process has got to adapt to unfolding circumstances. Still a great quote there. So bear that in mind. Whatever you come up with, make sure you've got flexibility and adaptability. We're not talking about completely straying off the path. A lot of businesses, I find, because their times are quite stretched, because there's a lot of things going on in their business life and personal lives that interact and overlap, is the focus is the thing that's really difficult to rein in here. So a lot of us may have aspirations to do lots of things with our businesses. Within reason, we've got to try and have not quite tunnel vision, but actually think about the main prize for the foreseeable. So what are we going to cover in this short session? Well, we're going to look in terms of stories. And for me, businesses are fundamentally stories that we create. They're your own personal stories, by the way. So your action plan, your business plan is not my business plan, not my action plan. It's your own personal action plan. Whatever business you are in, you're not replicating and mimicking somebody else's business, by the way. You're replicating and producing your own there as well. So story time is very individual. There are things that we can take from other businesses to learn from, but fundamentally, they're your visions, they're your stories. We're going to look at customers. Obviously, customers are critical. If you don't have a business that has customers or clients, then it's going to be quite difficult to make any money there as well. And we're going to have a little insight in terms of what we need to think about when we think about our customers. We're going to look at number love. Okay, that's obviously pretty much my forte amongst with other things as well. But the numbers that we need to blend in, the stories come first, the numbers reflect what's going on. And with all these things about best intentions, we need milestones and we need to monitor what's going on. Any of us amongst here who's thought, let's go out, let's exercise, let's become healthier, let's, lose weight, gain weight, whatever you want to do. If you don't have some form of progress to say, is my weight moving in the right direction? Am I eating the right calorific intake? If you're so inclined to run a marathon, for example, you might be saying, okay, how many miles am I running today? What's my time? So you need accountability, you need milestones, and that applies in your business as much as anything else in life. Now, 4 ingredients for success. And remember, these are a combo here. I'm not going to give any weighting to it, but I find that typically if we can blend all these 4 attributes together, they contribute to a success being more likely than not is. And success is a movable feast, by the way. We all have our own views of what success constitutes. Remember, it's your story, it's your business, therefore you define success as you see fit. So whether it's to conquer the universe and have an outlet all over the place, or whether it's to have a sustainable living for yourself and your family, whether it's to have a certain lifestyle, whatever that is, it's your measure of success. Make sure you've got that fixed in your own mind. Mindset and attitude is a real key ingredient here. So what's your attitude to things like risk? If you're a risk taker, your business direction might be going one way. If you're risk averse, you're a bit more cautious, which is perfectly fine. You might be going a different way. Do you have what's called a positive mindset? So when you have challenges, when you have things that are more at the trough as opposed to the peak of your business journey, how do you react to that? Do you have a fixed mindset? So obviously, typically things like record keeping numbers, how you conduct certain parts of your business, they might be pretty static and they've got to be fixed, like customer service. Positive mindset, takes out opportunities. For me, you've got to be a combo of the two. Skills. Do you have the right skills and competencies to deliver the plan that you want here? None of us, unfortunately, have all the skills required. So we're not all marketeers, finance people, HR, legal people. We tend to bring those services in as and when we require them. Obviously, we're very good at what we do, but effectively, you need to think, if I'm going to make this happen, what are the skills that I need to make sure I've got as a minimum to make it happen? And then you can think about how you're going to resource those skills. Do you buy them in? Do you borrow them? Do you exchange them? But ultimately, think about the actual skills that you need to actually make it happen. So if you are in a situation where you're thinking, okay, I'm going to be starting promoting more digitally, I'm going to be using social media much more actively, and I want to get some responses, I want to get some leads. I don't actually have the skill set or the time, perhaps, and time overlaps more capacity, but I don't have the skills to have an effective digital media campaign. Then you've got to think about investing time or getting somebody else to do that. And the mindset, by the way, also comes, not everything you can do in your business is free. At some point, you're going to have to invest time and money now in order to generate that future benefit going forward. Information. It ceases no more actually to surprise me how many businesses will make decisions based on gut, which is a great thing. I do it myself. I've got my fingers burnt doing it. I've made successes. But effectively, when we make robust, hard decisions, we need information to back us up. So when we think, actually, oh no, this is a great idea, I'm going to launch this new product, this new service, what's it based on? If it's based on your instinct, well, you should be talking to your customers. Find out, do a bit of research. If you think you want to invest money now, get the information. But information is valuable. It's a commodity here. It's around you, but you need to collect it and help you inform your decision. Another challenge is making sure you've got sufficient capacity. Now, typically, when we think about capacity, you may be in a situation, let's say you run a restaurant. Capacity physically is measured by maybe how many table covers you've got, how many people can sit down. If you're planning to expand that particular business, does your business have the physical capacity to take on more business? When we look at individuals, if you're delivering a service or doing something, apparently there are only so many hours in a day. Do you have sufficient hours in a day to deliver what your business journey would want to look like, what your aspirations are? If not, do you dampen down your ambition, or do you try and increase the capacity? Now, these things aren't easy, by the way, so don't think of it as just a paper exercise, but these are things that should be going through our mind when we convert our dream, our aspirations, into some degree of reality. I'm going to reinforce some of the things I've said already. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, Mahmood, that's great, but I don't have the time to do a business plan. I know what I'm going to be doing in my business. That's fine. Hundreds and thousands and millions of businesses around the world don't have business plans. Hundreds and thousands, millions of businesses around the world don't succeed. Hundreds and thousands, millions of businesses do work, but they feel they can do more. So for me, I don't really need any convincing, and I would thoroughly recommend, that you've got to think about in terms of planning ahead. What does it do? Well, it does a number of things. It's basically puts your thoughts, which could be, if they're anything like mine, quite scrambled, quite, all over the place, lots of ideas buzzing around, and it puts them down. And once we get something down on paper, virtually or otherwise, it actually take a step back and look at what you thought, and then you can actually see, does it make sense? You can check the information that you've got there. Have you actually thought about everything to go from idea into actual delivery and after? It's a bit of a sanity check. What I normally find in a lot of business plans or planning scenarios is lots of people are very excited about what they do, but what they don't do is they want to try and do 10, 15 different things at once. Some stuff is the bread and butter that brings it in. Some stuff might be a bit sexier. Those future developments that you want to make, they might come down the road. So a bit of a sanity check. Other things I haven't mentioned here on the viability. So viability is it going to work? Is it going to make you money? These things aren't going to happen overnight, by the way, but they're going to happen at some point. So you want to say, okay, I'm going to spend all this money, this time, this energy, and everything else today. Does it bear fruit later on? So assess the viability. Also, it cuts down the risk of things going pear-shaped. When shit hits the fan, when things don't go quite right. If you've got some idea of what might be happening, then you can do things. And for me, lastly, it's your accountability partner. If you've ever been to a gym, if you've ever gone weight training, if you've done any exercise, some people like the idea of a coach. Some people like the idea of somebody there saying to them every week, you've done brilliantly here, you've not done as well there, and chivvy it along. You may have a business partner. You may have friends and families that chivvy you along. Your business plan has saying to you, this is what you said you were going to do. This is where you are in reality. You've either done, you're on course, thumbs up, or you've not done as well as you should be doing, and therefore it's a mild slap around the face with a wet fish, and you can think, okay, why haven't I not done that? And then I can actually try and put it right there as well. Joined by a couple of great guests here. I'm just going to say a brief hello, just deep breath here. So Richard, good morning to you, and Karen. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't just do a little hello to them while we just pause there. If I can get this on the screen. There we go. There's Karen Maxfield with a boat. Nice little river cruiser. I used to own one myself many eons ago. Just don't get the time to do it, so I've got it no more. And Richard is going to be on here. Good morning to you, Richard, there. Okay, so let's go back to what we're saying. So think about the content. Now, remember, please do not get overwhelmed by this. I've seen lots of people talking about business plans and they say, here's a 28-page document. And they really are quite tedious there in the sense of, if you think a business plan is, I've got to sit down and put things under that and it's going off to somebody for this, that, and the other, you're going to lose the will to live. But you've got great vision in your businesses. You've got to think, okay, we cannot rely on what's happening forever. We might want to develop the business and grow the business. But remember, whatever your success motivation is, this is typically what I would suggest is the content of your business plan. Think about as though you're going for a Dragon's Den type thing. Think about going for a funder and you're presenting them something which they're going to look at and say, do you know what? You're worth investing in. You're worth giving a heap of cash here to take it forward. So these are for me, the key things that you should be including in your business plan. This isn't necessarily the order, but these are the key components. First of all, think about your destination. Where is it that you want to end up? And timeframes typically, by the way, I've been involved in business plans for organizations, believe it or not, that stretch up to 5 or 6 years. And I've been involved with putting business plans together for people like a 12-month cycle or a 3-year cycle. My normal advice would be, as a minimum, it's a 12-month roadmap that you can adapt as you go through. Ideally, go for a 3-year perspective. Now, let's get real here. If you can predict where you're going to be by next week, you've done brilliantly, because nobody can. This is not a prediction tool. This is saying, if I do this, if I do that, if I do all those other things that I'm planning to do, trying to get to the right customers, promoting my business in a particular way, developing a new service, a new product, getting all the skills, developing all that sort of stuff, this is where I'm going to end up. And it might typically take me a certain period of time. What I would say if I was going for a 3-year business plan or even a 12-month business plan is, where does the end point look like? Remember, this is not fixed. You can always modify. I would always start with the end, and then I would work backwards to say, how am I going to get there? And my apologies for this perhaps tired analogy. Think about, I'm going on holiday. I want to go on holiday next year. That's my destination. Right, what's going to have to happen to make it a reality? Well, I've looked at the cost of the holiday. It's going to cost me this much money, and therefore I need to look at my bank balance and think, okay, that means I've got to save so much per week. That gives me the progress. Oh, actually, it's a unique holiday. It's outside of Europe, perhaps. It's a safari. Okay, I might need to do something in particular to get myself geared up. Take another analogy. Take the example of, okay, you've got an idea, you want to run a marathon next year. God knows why. I think that's completely crazy, but obviously thumbs up to those who do. So for me to get ready for a marathon, 26 miles plus, what that means is I need to make sure that I build my fitness up to get to that journey. It might mean so many miles per day, building it up. It might mean changing my diet. It might mean lots of other things here. So think about the end point, elevator pitch. So can you describe your business in terms of what it does to the customer. So what is the purpose of your business? What's the what, the why, who you're for? Think of it like your business card that you present. Does your business card summarize it? And I, again, am a fan of putting the summary, your elevator pitch, at the start point. Now, moving on from that, you've got to have in there, so once you've got an end point, the thing is, how do you actually get there? And people use the word objectives, by the way. Objectives is just a posh word for tactics. What's the detailed journey plan to get to your end goals? Think about your customers. Now, who are they? And as much as we think what we do is brilliant, by the way, we're not for everybody. Just as much as individuals aren't everybody's taste, businesses aren't for all the people out there. So typically, if you're, and I'll take the two of our great customers here, if you're an install, if you were involved in the world of manufacturing, installation, well, you know, Joe Public may not be interested in what you're doing. If you are effectively selling welding equipment, well, you know, there are going to be people out there who aren't going to be interested in what you do. I'm in the world of numbers. I'm pretty good at what I do. In fact, very good at what I do. But there's going to be people there going to work who aren't going to be interested. So think about the customers and think about where they hang out. I don't mean what bars, even though that could be useful. But if you know where you can find them, then it makes it easier to communicate and engage with them and market to them as well. Think about what skills you've got. Think about the people that you've got around in your business to support you. What do they have in terms of skills and competencies? The numbers I'm going to come back to in more detail next week, but typically, what's the financial story? You've got to translate that into profitability, cash, in terms of how much money you're going to make. How much money are you going to need to get this thing going? You need money to perhaps invest, question mark. You need money to keep it going, and you might need to buy equipment. And also, typically, how do you actually know you're doing what you said you were going to do? And that's about managing the performance aspects. And remember, all we're talking about today, everybody, is the thoughts, what we're going to start with. We're going to carry on with this further next week. Typically, if you've got a goal, this is the characteristics of a goal. It's an end point. So it might say, where am I going to be in 12 months' time? Now, let me just differentiate here. A goal has got to be measurable. So you can't just say, I want to be rich. We all do, but it means absolutely nothing. It means bugger all in real terms. Does rich mean £100? Does it mean 1,000? Does it mean 10 grand? So a goal has got to be capable of being measured. So typically you might say, my goal in 12 months' time is to have profit of, I'll make this number up, 30 grand. My goal might be to increase turnover by 20%. That's measurable. And think to yourself, okay, I'm making nothing today. 30 grand in 12 months' time, is that achievable? Or based on what you're going to invest and what activity, you might say, actually, no, that's a little bit ambitious. So the last thing to consider is the time frame. So if you say, I'm making, maybe 50 grand now, and I want to make £1 million in 12 months' time, it's possible, I suppose. But you think within 12 months, how realistic is that? So that's the things you want to think about. To have a goal that meets all those characteristics. Now, think about these two key things here. And, it's very difficult to try and get the numbers for this here. All I want you to think about today, everybody, is the thought process behind it. So what's your marketplace typically? Are you selling B2C, which is just me being lazy, business to consumer, i.e. individuals? Or are you business to business? Or is it a combo? Think about what is it you're trying to do, by the way. I know it sounds really harsh. Customers, generally speaking, don't really care about us. They're more concerned about themselves, as it should be, and they're coming to us because they've got something going on in their businesses or their lives that you can help them with. If you can identify what it is you're actually doing, they sometimes call it in marketing circles, the pain that you're relieving, the problems that you're solving, the relief that you're giving. If you can identify that, it makes it much easier to develop your marketplace as well as your customers. Customers, I like this idea, by the way, I've come across it more recently in the last 2 or 3 years, is think about your customer as an avatar. So typically, what's the characteristics that make up your customer? Is there such a thing? if you look in your business, of your lovely customers, the ones that make you most money, the ones you like engaging with, the ones that do those things, and how would you describe them? An avatar is just like a representation. What are their pain points? What are the things that they hate doing? What are the things that delight them? Can you give me something about that customer? And the reason for doing it is not an academic exercise, because then it becomes much easier to talk in the language that's going to resonate. It's going to be much easier to communicate and reach out to those customers there as well. Customers, I found to my discomfort or pain, but it's true, don't really care about how brilliant I am. They expect that. So if they come to you, they'll expect that you know what you're talking about. But it's a pain relief that they're looking for. And what this means is sometimes we're going to try and avoid the generalities of how we describe ourselves, and we're going to be more specific. And obviously, ultimately, long term, we're not doing this because we want to make new friends, which is great if you do make friends. But bottom line, businesses are there to make money. People are there, have got problems, they've got money to spend. If you can solve that problem for them, you've got a great mix. Everybody's happy. Right, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much what I'm going to wrap up here on. And now what I'm going to point out here on terms of the next lesson presentation, what I'd like you to do, if you can, have a think back on terms of what we've talked about. And I would suggest, we're going to pick this up next week, what are your customers? Could you describe them, your profile? I don't mean it's Mr. X who lives at this address, even though that might be quite useful. We're thinking about what is it? What's the nature of your business? Could you describe it? What's your pitch? If I met you for the first time, what would you say about yourselves? Think about your customers. What is it that you're trying to do for them? More particularly at this early stage, think about your goals themselves. I would suggest that we don't overload this. We stick typically to about 3 to 5 maximum. So is it in terms of profitability? Got to have that in there. Is it about how much cash? Is it about maybe developing a new number of customers or marketplaces? Is it personal goals in there? No problem. Your business and your personal life overlap. Once you've thought about those end goals, stick a number to it. Think, is it realistic? Think also, in the time frame, if it's 12 months, for example, does that seem feasible that if I get my act together and I can get things moving, I'm going to get closer to that itself? Think about objectives. How do I get to that end point? And we can deal with that in more detail as the weeks go by. The numbers part of it, don't worry about that. We're going to overlay that at the moment, but it's the story. We've got to get the story right. The numbers then will be overlaid on top of it. Now, just in terms of if you want some follow-up information, obviously chuck some comments in. We'll respond to them. I'll respond to them accordingly. If you can read that, by the way, there's quite a lot of information that I'm publishing, and I have done for a while, on a regular basis. So if you feel so inclined, good old podcast. So this is designed not for technical people, by the way, but it's designed for businesses like ourselves that grasp this information, say, I want to digest it. You're not going to lose the will to live, hopefully. It's about 10, 15 minutes. Obviously, usual things like Instagram, Twitter, free resources published every week. If you've got any follow-up comments, I'd love to hear them. And what I'm going to announce now, next week's show and subsequent is going to have a slightly reformatted look to it. We're still going to have a bit of useful information, which I'm going to shove at you and hopefully you love and engage with. But I'm also going to add a couple of little elements as time goes on in response. And it's going to be things like shine the spotlight on clients. So I'm going to introduce my first guest for next week, Richard. I've talked to you about before. What the format's going to be, I don't know. In terms of fully, my people are still speaking to his people, getting those riders sorted out, cups of broth or whatever. So listen, have a fantastic week, everybody. Stay sensible, stay positive, and we're going to catch up soon. And we're going to move your businesses along with a bit of planning. Take care. And let's end the broadcast with a high note. So let's go back to here. Waffling on now.